Over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello, good evening and welcome to Dewbs Co with me, Nana Aquare. So yesterday, of course, it was not only Christmas Day, but also King Charles's first Christmas address to the nation. He talked of community and of selfless dedication, so that's the Sussexes off the list. But he did actually veer some people feel into political territory when he referenced public sector workers and of the anxiety and hardship paying bills and keeping families warm. Did he cross the line? We'll be discussing that. And as you know, it is Boxing Day today, apparently a big day in the hunting calendar. But trial hunting, a loophole in the Hunting Act, Labour argue, is a smokescreen for illegal hunts. So should trail hunting be outlawed? And there's been an increase in stay-at-home dads. Are you one? All of that to come tonight on Dewbs Co with me, Nana Aquare. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Police have named a woman who was killed in a Merseyside pub shooting on Christmas Eve as Elle Edwards. The 26-year-old was at the Lighthouse in Wallasey Village with her sister when she was shot. She was taken to hospital but later died. 4 men have also been treated for gunshot wounds. A search for the gunman is ongoing. A 10th person has now died as a result of an explosion at a block of flats in Jersey earlier this month. 73-year-old Kathy McGuinness died in hospital on Christmas Day. The blast, which happened in the early hours of the 10th of December, destroyed a building in St Helier. Ms McGuinness lived nearby. An inquest will open this Friday before being adjourned while the investigation continues. At least 55 people are believed to have died as a result of a severe Arctic freeze that continues to grip much of the US and Canada. Officials say 25 people have been killed in Buffalo, in New York State, where temperatures have dropped as low as -9 degrees. Across the US and Canada, thousands of flights have been cancelled and more than 150,000 homes are still without power. Buffalo officials say some of the deceased were found in snowbanks.
The Erie County Department of Health Medical Examiner's Office confirmed through last night 13 individuals who had died as a result of the blizzard. Died in a car, died outside from exposure died in a snow shovel or cardiac event regarding the snow blowing were found in a home. I have the very sad news to report that in addition to the 13 confirmed deaths yesterday, the Erie County Department of Health Medical Examiner's Office has confirmed an additional 12 deaths.
Staying with international news, and Russia's defence ministry say 3 of its military personnel have been killed after a Ukrainian drone was shot down over an airbase hundreds of miles from the Ukrainian border. The Kremlin says they were hit by falling debris in Russia's southeast region. It's the second attack on the military site this month and raises concerns among Russians that Ukraine can get past Moscow's air defences. Kyiv has not commented on the incident. The UK's rail networks have been at a standstill today as members of the RMT union held strike action over pay. Hundreds of trains usually run on Boxing Day, but they were all cancelled. 20,000 Eurostar passengers were also forced to make alternative plans as it cancelled all services to London, Paris, Brussels and Amsterdam. The UK Health Security Agency will stop publishing COVID-19 data early next month. The chief data scientist says it's no longer necessary as the country is now living with the disease. Data had been published weekly during the peak of the pandemic and every 2 weeks since April this year. Officials say COVID will still be monitored. And shoppers were expected to spend less in the sales today as the cost of living continues to rise. New research by Barclaycard Payments found that the average consumer intended to spend £229 in the post-Christmas sales. That's 4% less than last year. Despite that, industry analyst Springboard says the latest data obtained shows that footfall has actually been higher than last year. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're watching GB News. Back now to Nana.
So good afternoon, welcome. It's just actually good evening. It's just coming up to 6 minutes past 6 o'clock. This is GB News. This is also Dewbs Co. I'm Nana Aquir. And with me until 7, my panel, visiting professor at London South Bank University, James Woodhousen, and also Matthew Stadlen, broadcaster and political commentator. And as ever throughout the show, I also want to know your thoughts. You can always get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send me that tweet at gbnews. Now, most of you probably tuned in at 3 o'clock. It was the Christmas broadcast. It looked and felt a little bit different this year because, of course, it was King Charles. It was pre-recorded, and his message was from St George's Chapel. And he addressed the nation for the first time since his mother, the Queen, died. Now, she had appeared in millions of households across the country every December the 25th for decades. And King Charles III's maiden speech was watched by 8.3 million viewers. It was actually the highest rated on Christmas Day. But with a hard-to-act follow from the late Queen, his sympathetic speech had key topics such as he spoke of the cost of living crisis, striking, and also personal reflection. So some would say that he was overstepping the mark and that his speech was political. Matt, I'm going to come to you first. You listened to his speech. What did you think? Did it sound political to you?
I thought it was a good speech. I'm still getting used to singing God Save the King at sports matches because we all, well, many of us miss the Queen. She did a great job by and large. But I think King Charles has also done a good job so far. I think he comes across well. I think the way that he delivers lines, I worked briefly with him actually last year producing him, and he delivers lines well.
Drop.
Yeah,
did you? You worked with him?
I did, very
Interesting.
briefly. But I like him. Now, the thing is that one of the reasons I've quite liked him over the years is because of the causes that he backs. We're not going to get into the environment, I'm sure, now, but I think he's got that largely spot on. But it doesn't matter whether I like his politics or not, because the next man or next woman might not like his politics. Right. I think it's very important that the monarch is apolitical. And I don't think this speech is political. What he does is he congratulates the thanks the armed forces and the emergency services. Who doesn't want to thank them for what they do? Right. And he also thanks people who work in the health service and social care, who work incredibly hard to keep us alive and well to the best of our abilities. A final thought, I looked up the speech from the Queen of 2020, during the pandemic, of course, and she thanked frontline workers, and I don't think anyone then was suggesting that she was being political.
But he does actually specifically talk about people struggling to kind of heat their homes and things like that.
Millions of us are
But that is as a result of the cost of living. Some people may say that. James, what do you think?
Well, did he cross the line? I think he's always crossed the line. I think, as you say, Matthew, he was always an ardent, if not zealous, defender of the ridiculous environmentalist cause, talking to plants and all the rest of it. So I
can't lump plant talking in with the serious questions of the climate crisis. And
well, let him finish.
I can finish my point, Matthew. I think what he functions as is a sort of cipher for what Keir Starmer won't do, which is to express some covert sympathy for the strikers. And all power to him, but, you know, if we're going to rely on him to uphold nurses' wages or R&T members' working conditions, then I think that really is an indictment.
Do you know when he wrote the speech, though? When did he write the speech, James?
It's really an indictment of the Labour Party that people look to Prince Charles to provide leadership to the people who really need much better pay and conditions.
And also, Matt, in the speech he says, we see in our health and social care professionals, our teachers, and indeed those working in public service. So those are ultimately the main people who are going on strike. I mean, that is quite specific. He could have said other things, but he specifically went on about teachers who've been on strike. He talked about health and social care professionals. They've been on strike. Public service workers who've also been on strike.
I think if he wrote, teachers in England haven't so far gone on strike.
No, but in Scotland they have.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I think if he wrote the speech in the last few days, when we've all been talking about the strikes, then maybe perhaps he was nodding to it. But I suspect
even if he hadn't, he could have changed.
He could have edited it out. That's true.
Yeah.
What I suspect what he was actually doing was, in a year when the Queen passed away, and as he specifically says in the speech, we've got it here, that the armed forces and the emergency services who performed so magnificently as we mourn the passing of our late Queen, in no way is he suggesting there that the emergency services, he's supporting them through the strikes. He's thanking them for the work they did for us as a country, and also for him as the son, the grieving son of a mother, protecting us.
We hear that, but I mean, a lot of people will feel that he is actually sending a message, as James said, to try and sort of have a gentle dig and sort of pushing forward a gentle agenda.
I actually watched, because we were on the road, because over Christmas we split it between my family and my wife's family, so we were just arriving on the south coast as he was delivering the speech. So I actually watched it after these news stories came out. I think it's people media, some members of the media, looking a bit too hard, because then when I watched the speech after reading this stuff, I thought, no, what's all the fuss about? I really didn't think... No, I'm not here to defend Prince Charles, King Charles right or wrong, but my sense of it was he wasn't trying to be political. He might have been, I can't get inside his mind.
But when is he not trying to be political? That's the thing. I mean, he's very clever. He's not a fool, is he?
Well, if you look at the powers of royal prerogative that exist, or you look at the more than 700 unknown members of the Privy Council, I wonder if you can name them, Matt, because I can't. It's clear that the trappings of royalty and the sort of the right people like us, are immense in this country, and therefore it can be nothing but political. Yeah. It's always been political. He's sort of warmed up, Blairite, social democratic support, but not much of a support to strikers and a few other people. Won't see either him or Sir Keir through to real popular affection in the long term. So I think probably people were reading too much into the speech. There's not a whole lot of news about today, except that on your show tonight.
But James, you're a highly intelligent man. Do you really look at strikers? Do you really look at ambulance drivers, paramedics, nurses, the sorts of people that you and I, Nana, all of us have come to rely on over our lives? Do you really look at them and think strikers? Or do you look at them and people who've dedicated their life to the betterment of society, who are really struggling through no fault of their own, but because of the cost of living crisis? Whoever you blame for that crisis, do you not look at them as people who are really struggling and making a cry for help?
I'll tell you what I do look at, Matthew, is when you give your unequivocal support for the armed forces, I look at what the armed forces did in Iraq. I look at what they did the first time in Iraq. I look at Labour's backing for that and the way in which it occasioned a lot of popular disgust. And it's no critique of the professionalism of the armed forces to say I do not support them
Labour's
in what
backing
they
and
did.
the Tories backing, of course.
Well, Labour and the Tories, but the most egregious, as I'm sure a Labour man like you would accept.
I'm not a Labour man. I'm someone who thinks we'd be better off with a Labour government.
Okay, that's a Labour man where I come from.
Listen, there's just playing with semantics there.
It's a Labour man where I come from. You know, we need to remember just what Tony Blair and the Labourites did the last time, and also remember it's going to be a whole lot worse if Sir Keir gets in.
The Tories backed them to the hilt, didn't they, over Iraq?
Yeah, but who was in government?
I hold Blair responsible for what happened in Iraq. But don't pretend there wasn't cross-party consensus, because there was.
Well, listen,
certainly with the Conservatives and Labour. Anyway.
Listen, there was a lot of people who didn't actually want that war, to be fair. And ultimately, the British public did speak and said, "Don't do it," and Tony Blair went along with it. And now we know about the dodgy dossier, as many call it.
The British public didn't speak and say, "Don't do it." A
million
people went on the march.
That's quite a lot of people.
We've got a population of 65
but that's quite
million.
A lot of people.
It is a lot of people.
And even now, people.
And I went on that march, except
exactly.
I hovered on the sidelines because I actually didn't know. I wanted to be. You might laugh, James. I wanted to be sort of counted half in, half out, because at that stage it wasn't crystal clear to me whether he was wrong to go in. Looking back, I think we were wrong to go in.
At the time, even I could see that was wrong. I think a lot of people saw there was no point in that one, and we learned that it was really a bad thing. But if we bring it back to the King's speech then, so in your view, you actually don't think that it's political?
But I don't think that was my sense. Just watching it.
Do you not think that that's what he's sort of doing, though?
No, I do not think. You've asked me. I don't think that is.
But King Charles promised that he would not get into politics, and and he didn't actually go to COP27. But then apparently Liz Truss told him.
He's going to be. Do you remember we spoke in the summer when I was sort of cancelled? I was given a role at the BBC to be a presenter at 5 Live, and then my sort of enemies on the right said, "Hang on, he's a bit of a lefty. Why are you doing that?"
No, your enemies on the right. You're going to the BBC. You can't have an opinion.
All my opinions were expressed before I got the job. But my point is that if I had gone to the BBC, I would have lost my voice, because I would have had to be religiously impartial, as I was for the 9 years when I was there. Now, on a much yes, I was, but on a much grander scale, King Charles, I think he's got some problems, because he's spent decades, we might say, overstepping the mark by being overtly political on certain issues. Not party political, but political. And now he's lost that voice. And I think that's going to be hard. And we're all watching like hawks, aren't we?
Well, so you're comparing yourself to King Charles?
No, I said on a much grander scale.
Nobody could be grander.
No.
But, people are watching him like a hawk. You're right about that. And people are rightly nervous, I think, about his interference in politics. Right now, the threat to democracy isn't really coming from him. He's too much of a wally. It comes from other sources, not just the right-wing press, but our woke friends. And I think GBNews does a great job in defending democracy. And right now, Charles and the monarchy is a target, but...
well, it's a target for Harry and Meghan, for sure. He didn't mention them. Now, do you think he was right to do that?
Well, I think sang-froid, that's what we associate royalty with. I must say, Harry and Meghan's great achievement has been to make me sympathise with King Charles.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite hard where I come from.
Really?
But there's such a pain, that...
No, I think Charles is right not to talk about the Harry and Meghan situation. We don't know, because we've only really heard Harry and Meghan's account. They're free to do so now. We don't know what's gone on behind the scenes, and it's difficult if you're in King Charles' position or if you're in Prince William's position, because you, in a way, don't get the right of reply. Just like if you're a judge and you're attacked, for example. In our world, we can sort of shout back. Doesn't mean to say I don't have a lot of sympathy for Harry and Meghan, but I do also have some sympathy for King Charles on this.
Well, I mean, the royal family can shout back, but they have to do it very cleverly, because, again, they have to remain apolitical, and therefore they never complain, never explain, or never explain, never complain, whichever way around it is. But that was the whole sort of philosophy there. But I actually think he was actually right to say nothing. And I have even said that the press should stop talking about them. So when they have something to come out...
Oh, Nana, you talk about them on almost every show you do.
Listen,
you're obsessed by them.
No, obsessed. Obsession's a very strong word, hardly.
I think
listen,
you are.
If they bring out a book, or they bring out this documentary, or they bring out, as a member of the press, I have to sort of look at it.
King Charles is fine to stay quiet, because he's got Nana Queer doing his job for him very nicely on GBNews.
Thank you much. My God, a compliment from Matt Stadlen. What does he want? Listen, if you want to get involved with this discussion, you can. Don't forget, you can get in touch via email. You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can also tweet us at gbnews. What is your view on this? We've got loads more still to come. There's always loads of stuff on the way. We'll be talking fox hunting, and should it be axed, or does the tradition still have a place? We'll discuss that in a couple of moments' time.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. Clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you just join me, welcome aboard. This is Dewbs Co. I'm Nana Queer. Now, helping me through the hour are visiting professor at London South Bank University, James Woodhousen, and also Matthew Stoutland, a broadcaster and political commentator. Now, Christmas Day is over. Boxing Day may include sitting on the sofa, indulging in leftover food, watching the TV or going shopping for bargains. And there may even be a few sore heads. However, for thousands, the annual Boxing Day hunt is today's activity. And this morning, more than 200 hunts began amid the Labour Party calling for a ban to be strengthened, and the barrister behind the 2004 Hunting Act claiming that it was driven more by moral outrage rather than animal welfare. Clashes broke out between protesters and pro-hunting communities earlier today. But before we get to the debate, let's have a look at a familiar face who's been at a hunt today.
Traditional Boxing Day, you should all be here. Traditional Boxing Day, you should all be here.
Yes, of course, that is, of course, our very own GB News' Nigel Farage. So with the rise in convictions and illegal hunting, should fox hunting still go ahead? James, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think? Fox hunting, is that your bag? Have you ever been?
No, I've never been, actually, and it doesn't really attract me much, although I like the sounds. I like the woofing and the whistling and the beat of the hooves. Since I'm a man of the left, if left and right meant anything anymore, which it doesn't, I'm bound to confess I'm all in favour of fox hunting.
You're in favour?
Yeah. Let them hunt, they're about as representative, those guys on the horses with the red jackets, as their opponents. The hunt saboteurs, who are often so violent, really represent nobody more than Just Stop Oil represent. I think they're very similar, really. They've got contempt for lots of people. They've got a great amount of self-righteousness about animals and so on. They've forgotten George Orwell, who said, this one needs to get surfaced a bit more, that the English like animals to the extent that they dislike people. I think there's a lot in that. If you take the Sun newspaper's sadness about donkeys in Spain, it doesn't compare with their support for the nurses' strike.
Well, what about the poor foxes, though? I mean, it seems a bit savage, doesn't it? It's a bit barbaric.
Well, it could be a bit savage. Nothing like Iraq or Hiroshima. We need to get it in perspective.
But it's like hunting one animal type thing and cornering it, and I think it doesn't feel right to me, that sort of behaviour. It feels like something from an old bygone era, and not necessary. If you need to, get rid of some of a certain species, we don't need to do it like that. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I think this barrister that you quoted earlier is probably right. A lot of that bill was about moral outrage. Exactly. It was about the people. Now, did that make it bad law? Not necessarily. There is a problem. We don't want to be thought police in this country. We don't want to control people just because of what's in their mind at a particular time. On the other hand, everyone knew what these people were up to. They were chasing foxes until they killed them, if they caught them, and the foxes were killed in a savage manner. But it wasn't just the death. It was also the fact that they were chased and scared. Now there is an argument, and we're rehashing old arguments from 20 years ago. But there is an argument that shooting foxes is not humane. You're right; they need to be controlled up to a point, I think. But shooting foxes is not humane, because they might miss and they may go lame and then they die a prolonged death, whereas the act of being killed as a fox in a fox hunt is quite quick. Not the chase necessarily, but
you could argue that chase would represent somebody being lame for a while and having to deal with that injury for a while and then eventually dying. I think it's barbaric. What is the point of that?
So I agree with you. My position overall, just to be absolutely clear, I was just saying that I was trying to get to the root of what the law was about. I think that fox hunting should be banned, and not just that, because I want to live in a society that is relatively civilised. Now, you might say I'm a meat eater. I've got to do a lot better. And I think the way in which we treat animals in factory farms and so forth, we've got to stop that. But on the fox hunting issue itself, taking pleasure in the act of killing an animal, for me, is a step far too far. And I also think that Labour are right now to be calling to an end to drag hunting. Why? Because to my mind, that is clearly in some cases being used to cover up the act of killing a fox, because when they chase the drag, what actually happens is they flush out a fox. The fox may then get killed, but they've got a legal loophole to hide behind.
And that's just obviously not actually chasing a fox, it's just chasing something that is...
but it becomes about chasing the fox, but they might say incidentally or accidentally.
Yes, because that is the loophole in the law that allows them to carry on with this sort of practice and how they're kind of using it to carry on fox hunting. I don't know, I mean, I'm surprised that you would think that it's OK, James, because I believe in, I do believe in... sometimes you do need to try and keep a species down. You'd think they'd probably try and do that with us humans. Some people would say it was COVID, but, I mean, that's just a very just shaky ground. But
look, I got foxes in my garden. I like foxes, despite the mess that they make in my garden, right? I don't think these obscure hunts people, although there's a lot more of them than the saboteurs, really take pleasure in the fox being ripped apart. I take no pleasure in it.
I don't know. I think some of them do, though.
They may do, but I think it's the thrill of the chase that has always inspired the hunting community, the fresh air, the camaraderie and all the rest of it. If you're worried about a civilised society and you're worried about it being barbaric, take the fate of people confined to care homes under the Conservatives' lockdowns. Now, then we can really talk about barbarism. Then we can really talk about suffering. That really could have been avoided. That wasn't pleasurable for anybody.
No, but listen, if you take into account, and I don't think that a lot of the behaviour during the whole pandemic I thought was a bit off, but some things needed to be done. With regard to the care homes, if we're going to take that as an example, what the intention there, even though they got it wrong, was to protect. So their intention was not meant to be morally wicked. To me, fox hunting in that manner is quite a wicked way of, even if you're trying to cull the species, this is a barbaric way of doing it. I don't think it needs to be done.
But this is all a bit religious, Nana. I mean, the point about letting ill people out of hospitals who were in their 70s and 80s into care homes was...
that was totally wrong.
Well, it showed an inhumanity that far exceeds the most hatted huntsman that I could envisage.
I actually think that was just more stupidity.
Fair enough.
Not even thinking it through. But if we're looking at fox hunting, then that is quite specific, that's quite calculated.
But can't we get it in perspective?
Just to take James up on your points about the idea that hunts people are not necessarily enjoying the ripping apart bit. I don't know whether they are or they're not. But let's assume for a second they don't enjoy that bit. They're prepared to tolerate it sufficiently to be witness to it or sufficiently to go on the chase. And also, it's not just about the tearing up. It is taking pleasure in the thrill of the chase, as you describe it, when you know what you are chasing is an animal that you in your garden love.
But this is, you know, you were accused of obsession before, Nana. I thought that unfair, but I mean, your focus on the lupine rather than the human, the one fox that dies in a hunt.
We can multitask, James.
The one fox that dies in a hunt compared with the hundreds and thousands of people who died unnecessarily because of the complete safetyism and risk aversion of the government, their ignorance of science, their disgust for humanity, its distaste for old people. That's a lot more serious in my book.
Listen, you might frame it that way. Other people will see it differently. Other people may see it that the government is trying to protect people. But I can't, you know, there's no excuse for putting people who are sick into a care home where I mean, I don't know what they were thinking there, but I think the ultimate aim of the government with regard to the pandemic was actually to try and save lives and also to stop the NHS getting overwhelmed, which is what they said. And, you know, look, we can argue about that. But the intention was almost, I think, a kind one. Whereas if you look at fox hunting and the manner with which it's carried out, the intention is to literally frighten those poor little things and then kill them. And I think that to me, seems barbaric. And I actually was listening to a certain radio station, which I won't mention, but that's because it's all I can get on in my car. I've only got a little...
Not my old radio station.
I've only got a little C1. It doesn't do, unfortunately, digital radio yet, but it will do. I'll zoop it up one day. But I was listening, and they were talking... Somebody had phoned in, and they were saying that these children, they were quite young, they'd gone to the hunt, and they'd been given put some blood on their cheeks as like a sort of like war paint type thing. Now, and that was obviously the fox blood, which is somewhat barbaric. That sounds like the people who are doing this sort of thing.
I just want to say, and this is a point against me, right? Because but
don't do that,
I mean, if it's true, obviously.
I think it is relevant, right? I cannot believe that I'm sitting here for 5 minutes agreeing with almost every word that has come out of your mouth, Nana. So,
my God,
bravo to you on that front. But I do think that we shouldn't be overly obsessed by the fox hunting issue because the level of suffering from animals in this country, if you're comparing it to care homes, which I'm not sure is a fair analogy, although I thought the way the government handled the pandemic was largely disgraceful, or in many ways disgraceful, including the fact that we let back so many thousands of people into care homes. It was a disaster.
But that was ridiculous.
It was a disaster.
Anyone with half a brain.
But perhaps a more apposite analogy, given we're talking about animals and we're talking about cruelty, is what we do to the animals we kill for food. Now, I don't take pleasure in the killing of those animals. I take pleasure in the aftermath.
I take pleasure in eating, actually, but eating them, I don't mean to be cruel, but I do enjoy it.
But we are hypocrites as human beings.
Yeah, no, of course.
I'm not a hypocrite. I say hunt them, kill them, eat them, you know, and like them.
I'm deeply flawed. I do believe that, you know, if I'm going to eat it, though, I don't want it to have suffered in a bad way. And I also think that if we actually think about it, if something's stressed and you eat it when it's distressed, I don't think that's very good for your whole sort of... You're looking at this. No, I don't think it's good for your actual digestion and everything else like that. But that's just what I think. But lots of you have been getting in touch regarding the fox hunting. And Michael says, after hearing that Nigel Farage was fox hunting, he has now sadly lost mine and my wife's vote. We are very disappointed in him and everyone that supports fox hunting. OK, Mark says fox hunting is not a tradition. It is the last of the extremely cruel sports that was never properly dealt with due to the privileged status of those taking part. Fred says they inflict more pain than is acceptable in the rural communities. Animal rights people have no idea of the havoc and pain that they cause. Is he complaining about both there, I think?
Very British.
So was James.
And then Tom said the law should be repealed. Townies don't understand what is achieved.
Yeah.
Well, I hear you. I mean, look, I understand culling of species, but I don't think it needs to be done in that brutal fashion. But coming up, unions who have been causing the misery for Britons up and down the country have been found to have entertained Labour MPs to the tune of thousands. Are they too close? We'll debate that in a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So welcome back. It's just coming up to 35 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is GB News. It's Dewbs Co with me, Nana Aquir. And of course, joining me in the studio, visiting professor at London South Bank University, James Woodhousen, and also Matthew Stadlen, a broadcaster and political commentator. Now, you've been sending in your opinions. Keep them coming. You know the coup. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Now, it's been revealed that Labour MPs have accepted thousands of pounds worth of gifts and hospitality from some of the unions, wreaking havoc this Christmas. Among the politicians being wined and dined are Rachel Hopkins, the Shadow Cabinet Officer Minister, who accepted dinner and a seat at the table of the ASLEF Rail Union for 2 glitzy events this year. I think one of them was something to do with some sort of food. Which one was that? Let's see.
Kebab Awards?
Yeah, it was the Kebab Awards, actually. And Lisa Nandy, the party's Levelling Up spokeswoman, who accepted a 4-night hotel stay from the Communications Workers Union to attend Labour's annual conference in September. And Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, who accepted more than £750 worth of rail tickets and hotel stays from Unison and Nasuat to speak at a union event at an event this year. And separately, trade unions have donated more than £15 million to the party constituency groups and to its MPs since spring 2020. So, James, I'll start with you. Whilst this isn't illegal, is this problematic in your view?
Well, what's problematic is that Daily Mail's scraping the bottom of the barrel to impugn the Labour Party, which is very easy to impugn, but 35 grand, Nana. I mean, you know, now Rachel Hopkins, the Shadow Cabinet Office Minister, with whom we're all familiar, aren't we, Matthew? The poor thing got a seat at the table of the ASLEF Rail Union for 2 glitzy events this year, the British Kebab Awards, and the other was the East and Southeast Asians for Labour dinner. Both were worth more than £300. You'd have to pay me £3,000 to go to the Kebab Awards. All those announcements.
Poor thing.
You know, I like kebabs. I like Asia and Southeast Asia, but this is not corruption on a grand scale. Yeah, but, you know, but this is just rubbish from the Daily Mail.
It's not corruption at all, as you say. It's not illegal. I think the wider conversation to be had is fascinating. Whether our MPs should be able to receive gifts. And also, even though they declare them, of course, on the register of interest, but also whether they should be able to do second jobs. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. I'm inclined to agree, at least in part, with James here. This is a desperate attempt by the Mail to tie the strikes to Labour. The Conservatives, let's remember, have been in power, initially with the Lib Dems, OK, for 12 years, for over a decade. These strikes are about the Conservative Party, not about Labour. And what the Mail is trying to do here is say, some Labour MPs received a bit of hospitality from unions,
so let me get this straight.
and therefore these are.
So let me get this straight.
The undertone is that these are strikes that are tied to Labour. It's nonsense.
So let me get this straight.
Absolute nonsense.
So let me get this straight. You're prepared to dismiss then this as complete nonsense?
No,
because you are. You're dismissing it, and I think actually it's very, very important.
The wider story is important.
Let me finish, because I did listen to you. I think it's very, very important to actually consider what these people are doing. These are potentially leaders of this next country if they're planning to. Sorry, let me finish. These are potentially a party who are maybe going to take over if the Tories pull themselves together. They need to get on with it. And what we're seeing here is that they are in hock with the trade unions. And what we need to consider as a people watching this and as a people who are prepared to vote for these people is whether they will be swayed in their decisions and be prepared to take more of these things. Because, and I don't think they're more things. I mean, one of them here, Jonathan Ashworth, the party's work and pension spokesperson and transport spokeswoman, Louise Haigh, and employment spokesperson, Justin Matters, went to Madrid at the expenses of the Trade Union Congress, OK? Collectively, it's worth £7,000. Now, that, to me, is quite a lot of money, and they should know better. They shouldn't be accepting things like that. Why are they accepting stuff like that?
Look, you could only have a balanced conversation about this if you take some Conservative MPs, indeed many Conservative MPs, and ask who is giving them gifts as well? Who's funding the Tory party? Yeah, we all know, and it says in this article as well, that the trade unions...
Well, that's why
the trade unions part fund the Labour Party.
So why are you
dismissing something like £15 million.
So why are you dismissing it? You're dismissing it. You said...
You're missing the nuance.
No.
Are you going to let me answer?
No, don't patronise me.
OK, well, don't let me answer.
Don't patronise me. I'm not missing any nuance here.
Well, I'll explain why.
Well, you can let me finish. You have said that this is just the Daily Mail trying to stoke this, that and the other, when actually... And then you're saying you need to go... This is a very important thing, right? These people are in hock with the trade unions. £15.8 million. £15.8 million.
As I said, the very
I'm still speaking, my mouth is still moving. £15.8 million worth of money has gone via those trade unions, through those trade unions, since Keir Starmer's been there. And these are extra bits. This is on top. We need to take that seriously.
It is very important. The first thing that came out of my mouth was the wider conversation about what MPs receive from whom, what influence it may or may not have on them, who funds our main political parties.
Exactly.
It is important. All I am saying is that in this case, I think what the Mail is trying to do is tie the strikes to the unions. It's not an article simply
why
about...
Not? Strikes are tied to the unions. What's wrong with that?
You mean the Labour Party?
They are. I'm trying to... We've talked a lot...
You mean the Labour Party to the unions?
Yes, well, obviously the strikes are tied to the unions. Tie the Labour Party to the strikes and to the unions. We know that there is some sort of symbiotic relationship between the unions and Labour.
Exactly, and we need to consider whether that is conducive.
Look, as someone who, broadly speaking, supports the Labour Party, I think it is absolutely fair that Labour should be scrutinised, broadly speaking.
Good.
Labour should be scrutinised over who funds them and what their MPs are receiving, just as the Tories should be.
Which they are.
All I am saying is that there is a wider issue here. The government at the moment and the MPs who support that government, the Tory MPs, you could find many stories about them would raise eyebrows.
You could, and we have raised eyebrows on many of those stories, but this should not be dismissed in the Daily Mail. Have got a good point, James?
Well, the bigger issue is even bigger than what you say, Matthew, which is, should the state or the Electoral Commission or Matthew or Nana determine how political parties are funded? Right? And my answer is no. Of course, that hands a lot of power to, baronial estates supporting the Conservative Party, baronial union leaders supporting the Labour Party. But if you want to tell me who the impartial authority is, who you can identify, who would say, no, you're not allowed to take that donation, you are allowed to take that donation because I say so, who's going to elect that party? Who's going to be sure that they're impartial? If I can just finish, I think you can allow me just this once. We need new parties in this country, and the more restrictions we place on their funding, from whoever it is, however dislikable, is a great mistake to allow, and one that will stop the emergence of the new parties that this country desperately needs.
But we need to take into account who is funding them. So,
yeah, sure.
So with regard to...
But is it a question of bans, my dear? One thing is your information about it, and not being covert about that. But another thing is whether, we're going to believe that a neutral arbiter should decide how political parties are funded. No, that's not democratic.
But if we look at the things that they're accepting, we should be asking whether our MPs should be allowed to accept these sort of things.
Yeah,
because
let them allow it.
And also, what you said, Matthew, actually was about their second jobs, because I'm not happy with them being able to have a second job. Because I think that is a conflict in many cases of interests.
It's a really difficult, thorny issue. We, at the moment, have IPSA, which is the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, I think, and they regulate this, OK? So they decide what you can and can't receive, or at least they log it. And they don't set limits necessarily, but they monitor it. So I think about 80% of what MPs, for their private offices, so not government, but MPs, for their private offices, so for example, for staffing and stuff, about 80% of that is covered through IPSA. The question is, what happens to the other 20%? And also, what happens to MPs who are working in jobs other than for their constituents? And I think that is really important. There may be transparency. There is transparency because we have the Register of Interests, and that seems to be monitored by IPSA. But the fact that we've got transparency doesn't, in itself, I think, cure the issue. Because if I elect an MP, I want that MP to be working for me and working for the other people who live in my area. I don't want to think or know that they may be being influenced by people who are paying them or giving them gifts, in this case, outside of me, the public, and I think it is a problem. You disagree, though, on that?
No, I was just going to say, when I run for MP again, if I do run again, because I have run, I promise to donate my MP's salary to the popular cause.
Which is what?
Well, anything I like.
Well, you can do that if you like.
Yeah, so I won't take a salary, and nor will I have a second job.
But I'm run for free.
Yeah, I'm entirely relaxed about, political parties getting their funding from anywhere. It's the ideas that count. Let's not join the dots.
You say it's the ideas that count, but if we just think about it if we think about what has been said, the trade unions, and we know for a fact that in particular the civil servants trade unions, are trying to bring down the government. That's what they said, that was their aim. That's what the leader of that union said.
The First Division Association, he's paid 150 grand, he doesn't need any extra money.
But that's what I'm saying, the unions are getting too powerful, and if the political parties are relying on these unions for their money, which a lot of the Labour Party are relying a lot of money on them, then I think, we have to be careful.
The unions have never been less powerful. I mean, you're so young, Nana. You don't remember when they were a bit powerful. Do you think Mick Lynch is... You think Mick Lynch is where Arthur...
How old do you think I am? How old do you think I am?
No, I'm not going to get into that. No, wait a minute. I'm the one answering questions here. How old do you think I am? No, my point is that if you...
Because that's patronising. Let me read some of these out.
It is, James.
It is pretty patronising, don't you?
Really? What?
Called Nana my dear as well.
I heard that earlier.
It's a terrible offence.
No,
a terrible offence. The question is Mick Lynch up to... Is Mick Lynch up to Arthur Scargill? Are we in the same era as the real era of trade union power? We're not, Nana.
Well, they didn't have... Well, listen, when they had the big general strike in the 20s...
We're not that old.
It took 9 days. It took 9 days for them to stop doing that. But what I'm saying is, do we really want our parties, political parties, in hock with the unions? Marilyn says, Nana, I voted Labour over half a century because my dad said that they were for the working man who were poor people. I voted Tory last time because all of them years of voting Labour we are still the poor people. Reform next because the Tories are embarrassing. I agree with you there. Backstabbing each other when they have a majority, not good. And he says it is the fact that the money comes from the unions that is the issue. The amount is irrelevant, and Angela Rayner could afford to pay for her own rail fares. Well, that is a good point. I don't think they should be accepting gifts from people. The country run by a Labour government doesn't bear thinking about, and Farage's fox hunting has killed Reform UK off. The people who think the Daily Mail is a pro-government right-wing paper clearly don't read it. There you go, Matthew, you've been told. Well, you've been sending in your thoughts, keep them coming. Up next, men, are you happy to be a stay-at-home parent? There's been a rise in dads looking after their children. We'll discuss that in with a couple of blokes in a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel. It's coming up to 49 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwe. This is Dewbs Co. Right, so with me until 7, broadcaster Matthew Stadler and also James Woodhousen. Right, so you've been sending in your opinions. We will be looking through all of those, but our last one of the day is a story that stay-at-home dads are on the rise. Now, they're up a third since before the pandemic, and that's according to the stats from the ONS. 1 in 9 stay-at-home parents are fathers, up from 1 in 14 in 2019. COVID restrictions and a culture shift resulting in changes to who the breadwinner is in the household are two of the main reasons experts say are the cause of the increase in dads staying at home. And Matt, I know that you are a stay-at-home dad. You feel strongly about this one. What's it like? You enjoying it?
Well, I'm sort of semi a stay-at-home dad in the sense I'm self-employed. So I go out to work, come in here on GB News, host lots of events on stage, do other jobs and so forth. But I spend some of my time at home. And that is a great privilege because we had little Wilfred 13 weeks ago. And it's meant that I've been able to be really active in his early days, doing all the nappies, not all the nappies, goodness me, my wife might be watching, half the nappies, and helping a bit at night and just being involved. And it's wonderful. And when he smiles back at you, everything is more than worth it.
It's probably just wind.
Not anymore.
No,
not when you get to this stage.
Gas at this
That's
stage.
what
I'm
someone
sorry,
said
mate.
the first time he smiled. I was gutted. But not at this stage. not at this stage. not at this stage. Anyway, leaving Wilfred aside for a second, my wife is soon going back to work. She's a director at a solicitor's firm, and she's sort of a bit gutted about that because she'll be going back after 3 months. And I'm going to be having to pick up some of the loose ends when she does that. And we're trying to work it out, and we're not badly off. We're reasonably well off. But can we afford to bring in a nanny when I want to go and do the stuff that I need to do for work? We're sort of making it up as we go along. And if we're kind of a bit concerned about it, relatively well-off people, goodness knows how a lot of the population are getting on.
What about nursery?
Childcare before state school, before your kids are ready to go to school, childcare is really expensive. Nurseries can be mind-poppingly expensive. And if you don't have a support network, now we have great support networks, but we don't have people living near us who can help with the babysitting. If you don't have that, if you're not lucky enough to have that, then you've got to make some quite hard financial choices. And I'm sure some parents think, is it worth me going back to work? If we both go back to work, can we afford the childcare? These are difficult things.
So staying at home, when you are staying at home, because obviously you're doing a lot more, a larger share of the childcare than the majority of men.
I don't know whether...
Well, I mean, look, from the statistics, it suggests that women do the majority of the childcare, and I think that's pretty obvious. When you are staying at home, what are you doing? You're watching daytime TV and stuff?
No, so honestly, I'm working in any moment I can, doing my podcast, 20 Questions With, editing that, coming on GB News, doing all the other stuff I do. But I have to stay up, like, I don't know, to 2 in the morning sometimes to get that editing done, because when you are looking after the baby... You
can't really do anything else.
Almost can't do anything else, unless he's asleep.
Now,
unless he's asleep.
And with regard to the amount of work that it is to look after a child, is that what you're expecting? Or are you... quite thinking, oh my God.
I was so happy when Laura became pregnant.
But did you not think...
I didn't really think that far ahead. I thought, whatever happens, we will make it work. And that's what we're sort of muscling through, trying to do now.
But were you expecting the work to be as it is?
So the thing that I'm quite relieved about is, apart from the first 2 weeks, which were the hardest of my life in terms of sleep deprivation, the sleep bit is quite good now, or reasonable.
Has he got sleep?
But partly because once you've had no sleep, any sleep is good. But what's tricky is carrying him, because there was a stage where if you didn't carry him around, he would cry. And so that is physically, even at my strength, I'm joking. My wife does a lot.
Well, you've got to carry yourself as well. Right, James.
Thank you, Nana.
James, have you ever been a stay-at-home granddad?
Not enough. No, not enough. I'm very guilty that way. I have 2 grandchildren, and they're a delight. I think, looking at the article, the interesting thing is the increase in stay-at-home dads is from 101,000 to a little more than 140,000, and that's since 2019. That's a hefty increase. Still absolutely a very small number of stay-at-home dads, but I think what it gives expression to, Nana, if I may, is that sex role stereotypes, as our sociologists would call them, are gradually unravelling. You know, women go out to work, men stay at home a bit more and look after the kids a bit more. So the Harriet Harman worldview from the Labour Party, that all women are discriminated against at all times in the workplace, that the pay gap is a total outrage, that, you know, women are having an appalling time at work in every situation, just isn't indicated by this. You know, women are graduating more than men. They're doing better at maths, I believe, than boys.
Well, pretty much better all round, actually.
Well, we could take that view. But anyway, you know, no doubt there are lots of new men who are a bit wimpish in this, you know, fatherly stakes. But at the same time, it's good news that women are out there playing a proper role in society and not always confined to the home. So I take comfort from the figures, really.
Well, I think it's a good thing, and it's good because
That's some serious backtracking from your "my dear" comment, James.
Yes, isn't it? He really is. You've earned some points, but I'm going to read out some of the messages that we've had here because Kevin says, "I love your control of these 2 men, Nana. Gosh, you frighten me, and I'm still at home." Bernard said, if the Tories were in favour of unions, we're going back to unions now, they would then be criticised. Brian says the unions are handing over members' money. Have they asked the members for their consent or appeal? Oh, here we go. This is one for you, because Graham, this is about stay-at-home dads. Graham said, it's not really a surprise that men are left holding the baby. Really?
I want to make absolutely clear, in case my wife is watching, that she still does the majority of the hard work, and she's breastfeeding. That's 4 hours a day. And
you mean you're not?
You could probably do it.
I've got pecs, not breasts,
well,
James.
That's what you're calling them. That's what he's calling them. And Jill says, I think it's great that men and women can share these roles. I tend to agree with that.
Sure.
When you were younger, though, it must have been quite a sexist sort of environment. I should imagine it was, as in the expectation was that women would be the ones who would always be looking after the kids.
No, I think, you know, I've read very widely in the history of feminism, and the 80s, when my kids were born, was the halcyon period for sharing domestic labour, for you know, men actually reforming and doing some tasks. Obviously, they didn't do enough, and they're still not doing enough. But it's back in my day, when as a parent, you know, the whole thing was very much in the direction that we're now seeing.
Well, it's good to see us going in that direction. Final one to Graham, who sent in a message. He said, Nana, You are so incredibly intelligent and amazing. That guy was so patronising. He's talking about you. I thought I'd finish on a little compliment to myself. Well, thank you so much to broadcaster Matthew Snadland and also James Woodhouse, and he's visiting professor at London South Bank University. And a huge thank you to you for taking part in the show. If you missed any of it, then you can catch up on previous episodes on YouTube, where you can stream the show live or catch us on the GB.
It is looking chilly out there, mix of clear spells and scattered showers. In detail, the southwest of England this evening, seeing a mixture of heavy showers and then clear spells. Temperatures around 5 to 7 Celsius for most, staying breezy along the coast, adding to the wind chill. Skies clearing then this evening for many parts in the southeast of England. Most places dry, though. Perhaps a few light showers in the east. A rather chilly evening then further across to the west in Wales, with a scattering of showers there, and breezy along the coast there particularly. Temperatures around 4 to 6 Celsius. Plenty of dry weather Boxing Day evening for the Midlands, but the risk too of some showers. Rather cold again, temperatures there down to 3 or 4 degrees. Winds staying light though. Rather breezy this evening then across northern parts of England, and further blustery showers coming in. The showers indeed falling as sleet or snow over the higher ground at times, so on the cold and icy side for many. A blustery Boxing Day evening for Scotland. Further sleet and snow, I'm afraid. Some tricky travelling conditions as a result developing at times, with the ice on untreated surfaces particularly. Temperatures around freezing. An icy evening to come too for Northern Ireland. Sleet and snow showers add to the mix, turning cold with temperatures tumbling towards freezing and the winds blustery around the coast. So a cold and frosty night for many. Ice in the north, mild, wet, windy weather moving into the west later on. That's how it's shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions.